Good morning, world. Had another busy week in culture this week. To start off with, kids are not going to be going back to school in Southern California.
We have that and other stuff coming up in this episode of Cedric and Brian. I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian, and this is Cedric and Brian. All right, Cedric, so first off, I was reading this article about terms that, more terms that we're not supposed to use. Things like paddy wagon, apparently.
Right.
It's offensive. Hip, hip, hooray.
Like hip, hip, hooray.
Hip, hip, hooray. And I'm going to link the article. Yeah, they're so ridiculous we don't even want to say them, but I will link the article below so you can read why these are offensive. And then the peanut gallery, hey, they're sitting in the peanut gallery.
Right.
Yeah, apparently that's offensive.
Plus, when people who make silly comments, it's enough out of the peanut gallery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So apparently in today's culture, God, I hope it's only here. I can't see some of these countries in former Soviet Union worried about these terms. Before I get into the word that I thought made sense, but it just confuses me more, is those of you young kids who are watching this, or even people our age, Gen X's, if you haven't read the book 1984, right now is a good time to read it, because when I read it back in the 80s, I thought, oh, this is a good time to read it. But guess what? Now is a really good time, because it's basically about council culture and words and thought police. Anyways, do yourself a favor. This book was written in 1948, titled 1984. Just read it. It's by George Orwell.
George Orwell was ahead of his time.
Yeah, so it's all too familiar. But the other word that I heard, and it kind of made sense, and then it just confused me more, is the term they said in the same article is you shouldn't use Eskimo.
Eskimo?
Yeah, because what they're saying is you're taking a group of people that are in different tribes and you're just calling them Eskimo. But the reason they're saying is so when you talk about somebody, you say, that's an Inuit person, which is a native person of but I mean, how are you going to know that? So I was an example I used, because me and him call each other black and white all the time. We're not offended by those terms, because if somebody were to say,
because I'm black
and I'm white, and that's a descriptive term. I'm not as white as this cup, and he's not as black as this cup. But you understand what we're talking about, because otherwise, if you have to break things down, then you would say, hey, did you see that show with Cedric and Brian? It's the black guy and the English, Welsh, Russian, Polish, German guy. I mean, just say it's the black and white guy. It's not offending anybody. And so I thought, at first, okay, Eskimo, maybe that is clumping it, but we use terms like black, white, Asian, Hispanic, or...
It's a descriptive term.
Yeah, words are for descriptive. If you're getting offended by words, you've really... That's what we call a first world problem, right?
Yeah.
If you're offended by a word... when we grew up, there was a saying, I don't know if the kids have it now, sticks and stones.
Yes.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never harm me. But now, in today's culture, it seems like words just cause people to have to go into a safe space, right?
Get triggered.
So you're not supposed to use terms, but then when you look in the newspaper, they talk about the black community. So it's okay to use the descriptive term black when you're talking about the community.
Right.
Is that a racist term? And if you said white community, you would think they're talking about a bunch of racist white guys, right?
Right.
The white community. But you can say black community. So I just asked Cedric, I go, is black community, is that racist? Or how do you feel about that?
I know what they're trying to say, because like Brian was saying earlier, you can use... I don't call myself African American. I call myself American. I don't think my ancestors are from Africa. It was back in the Olympics, 1984, that barefooted run from South Africa, Zola Budd. Very quick, long-distance white lady. She was from South Africa, so she came back over here and had her citizenship. She was African American, although she was a white lady.
White as me.
The black community. I can understand what people are saying when they say that. I don't put a whole lot of weight into it, because I understand it's. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this a week and a half ago. We're talking about the culture, but then we start talking more, and I think we talked about this on last week's episode. Is that sometimes the black community can mean the foods we eat, and the music we listen to, and then the clothes we wear. But my family growing up, my dad being from Mississippi and my mom being from Alabama, they grew up on a lot of fried foods like fried okra and catfish and oxtails and things like that. But then I was talking to my friend, and she said, well, that's just Southern food. It's not necessarily indigenous to black people,
right.
But although we ate it a lot.
But why do they tell us? They keep switching things up on us. So
right.
First, you're not supposed to separate people. Now you're supposed to separate people. Don't use the term black. Use the term African American, but you can use the term black culture.
Right.
So it was a thing when I was looking up this article about Eskimo and some of the words you're not supposed to use. It just was confusing.
Right.
And it seems that when you say black community, it was like he talked about before. It's like not all black people are the same, believe it or not.
Right.
So when you say the black community, what are you talking about?
Right. We're just talking, it's a pride statement, like you said. You can't say white community because that elicits a racist.
Yeah, it sounds like a racist thing.
A bunch of white supremacists and things like that. So you can't say that. Yeah, the black community is taking. As a black, and I will say I'm a black man, I take pride in my culture. And I was talking to the same friend about a week ago, and I said, honestly, if I had a choice, if I had an option today, if someone said, okay, so you can be reborn again today, would you choose another race or culture? I said, absolutely not. I love being a black man. So you're very proud of being a white man.
No, I'm not, because if you say you're proud and white, guess what? You're part of the Proud Boys. You're a racist.
You know what I mean.
But you can't really say you're proud. And I know. But you know what? And this is the difference probably, because we as white people, we don't think of we're not proud and white. If I was going to say something, it's like people that are Irish, I'm a proud Irishman.
Right.
Something like that. But I don't ever hear people say, unless they're racist usually, I'm not this proud white person. We just don't use that in our vernacular. Right. I'd say, like Italians, I'm a proud Italian, or I'm a proud Irish person. Right. But that's the difference. I would not say I'm white and proud.
Right.
And it just doesn't sound right.
Right.
And it's probably because in our culture, I guess growing up, that's pretty much all I saw was white. So you really don't think about it. So I can understand you're coming from a different point.
Right.
So.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think we should probably get away from that, because that's just more of separatism.
Right.
I'm in the black community. It's like, okay, so you're not in my community.
Right.
So, and I understand when you're using it as descriptors, like I said before, it's just easier to say, like, and I saw a funny.
Excuse me, I have a delivery for Richard Evans. Oh yeah, he's the blue, blah, the guy with the collared shirt on down the hall. Next to the guy with his hand on the printer. The new intern just looked at him. Look, we just scratched his arm. He tells really funny jokes, man. His the shirt's tucked in. He's awesome. He's got short hair, a spotted tie. He's going through a divorce. Come on, he's got pleated pants.
You mean the black guy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't really see that. But as a descriptor, I think it's fine to say black, white, Asian. You're just making a description for somebody to know what you're talking about. But then when you start separating yourself by community, I think that kind of leans towards being racist. And I know you don't take it as a racism thing, but to me it's part of that separatist thing. It's like,
right.
It sets you apart from me. It's like, right. I'm part of the black community. It's like, oh, okay. So if you're confused out there, I want you guys to know I'm confused too.
I'm not sure either.
Unless you're living under a rock, you've heard all this stuff about defunding the police, and in some cases, they want to actually abolish police, which is silly. So I started to think about, if you watched one of our past episodes on pet peeves, Cedric knows one of my number one pet peeves, because it even came out when we were doing a trip to Home Depot, which wasn't even on that pet peeve, but people that leave their carts, not putting their carts away in the cart bin. So I thought about something. I thought, if people think that they can live without police, my analogy would be, if you went to a Costco or a Target or an Albertsons, and you went in there, and one of the things that you do if you want to do the right thing is, when you're done shopping, you take your cart, you take the extra 10 seconds, I think we timed it, 10 seconds to push your cart over in a cart bin and go back in your cart. You do it because it's the right thing to do, and if you didn't do it, there would be carts everywhere. People leave carts behind cars, right, in front of cars. Then you have to get out. You need to move them. Now, if I went to the store and I saw every cart in the cart bin and everything looked neat and tidy, I would say, maybe we don't need all these laws, and we don't need police to enforce these laws, because everybody is doing the right thing, because they have this little inner voice that gives them shame if they don't do it. So if I went and I saw that, I was like, okay, we don't need police. You're right. These defund police people, because look at all the carts. People just know what to do. But what do you see when you go to a store? You see carts everywhere. Nobody even takes a time out, because carts are something where there's no law against it. You don't have to put those carts away. There's no law, there's no enforcement of it. It's just the right thing to do. Well, since I do go to the store and I see carts everywhere, there is no way we could live without laws.
Right.
Because people don't do the right thing for something as simple as putting a cart away. Right. Why would they not infringe upon somebody else's rights and personal space?
Right.
So for that reason alone, and I know this is a stretch, but for that reason alone, I think we need, police and laws.
Yeah.
This may be old news now, but it was a big deal when it came out, and that's the whole Nick Cannon story.
Yes, Mr. Carey. Mr. Mariah Carey.
And when we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys, and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. When you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul, that we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and they're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages.
I don't know what's going on. It's a buzzword that's been going around lately, but everybody's in this woke area of their life. They got to be more woke, and they got to speak out on things that really don't exist. And I think Nick Cannon did that. I don't know if he's starting to bite the hand that fed him because he wasn't relevant anymore. And I said that a few weeks ago about, LeBron James and other NBA players being very skittish about talking out against China in the NBA because China is a huge marketing financial arm for the NBA. So I think Nick Cannon just went out there and he started talking about a lot of stuff that I don't know if he really meant it, but he felt like he had to say something to stay relevant. And here's the whole thing. We're talking about, and here's the irony of it. When you start talking about, well, we'd stop racism and stop making people separate and stop doing that. But then you're talking about, well, those Jews and then those white people, and we need to, be separate from this. Like, you're fighting, and as Martin Luther King Jr. said, you're fighting hatred with hatred. Yeah. You're fighting racism with racism. And then it's a buzzword that I really don't like. It's when black people do it to white people, it's called reverse racism. Brian insults me as racism. I insult Brian, it's called reverse racism. I said it before, there's no such thing as reverse racism. There's just racism.
Well, and I remember my sister bringing it up, and I had her talk to you about it because she said, I heard from one of the black nurses that she works with that said, oh no, that black people can't be racist because part of the definition of racism, and I'll put it right here, and we did it on our TikTok, is that you have a feeling of superiority. You can only be racist if you feel superior. Well, Nick Cannon's statement said white people are less. Yes. They're less because they don't have melanin. So that is the definition of racism.
Right.
He feels that he's because of his skin color, he's above white people. So that's racist. But that's not even why he got fired.
Right.
He didn't get fired because he said stuff about white people. It's because he works for a Jewish-owned company. Right. And he said some anti-Semitic things, and like he said in our last episode, you don't invoke the name of Farrakhan and not think that you're not being anti-Semitic. That guy's the biggest anti-Semitic guy I've ever seen in my life outside of Hitler.
It's a damn shame.
But you know what? That was a year ago, that interview. Right. But it was because he was with the Public Enemy guy, who is also a Farrakhan disciple. Right. So he was just a yes man for Nick. It's like he just nodded.
And we've been getting a lot of comments who are like, well, let's brush it under the rug because Nick has since apologized for that. Now, for me, I always, and I could be wrong in this, usually people apologize, they apologize for one or two reasons. They apologize because they're wrong, or they apologize because they got caught and it's going to affect their pocketbook.
And he didn't apologize for the white comments, I don't think. He apologized for the anti-Semitic comments that he made. So anyways, we're just bringing that back up for those of you who may have been living under a rock and didn't hear about the whole Nick Cannon thing.
It's a damn shame.
So then, as we alluded in the beginning, kids in Southern California, for those of you watching, around the world or outside of California, I don't know what your states or countries are doing, but California pretty much, at least Southern California, has decided that the kids are not going to go to school in the fall. And before I get into the union stuff, you might want to chime in on this. My wife saw postings of teachers on Facebook, which if you want to get frustrated, just go on Facebook and watch the comments.
Which is why I don't have a Facebook account.
I know. I barely look at it now. But teachers on there saying how they shouldn't have to go back to school. Why should they put themselves in danger? And then I say to them, what about the person at Albertsons, Costco, the firefighters, the police, the nurses, the doctors? So why is a teacher, who I believe is an essential worker, why they think that they don't have to put themselves in danger and go back to school drives me crazy. And the friends of ours who are teachers, they want to go back to school. How do you feel about that? You're a teacher.
I think kids need to go back to school. Here's my reasons why. I mean, yeah, you go to school and your kids are going to learn math and science and English and history, but they learn so much. A lot of what they learn doesn't even come from the classroom. It's the socialization skills and how to interact and how to work in cooperative grouping areas and how to work as a team. And they are losing out on that. When all this stuff started back in March and we canceled school and everybody went to Zoom learning and things like that, you could progressively see it on the faces of the students. And I'm not saying this lightly. There was a slight decline in anxiety, depression. You could see it on their faces because before this stuff even started, it's hard to get the kids' noses out of their phones to begin with. And now you stick them at home all day. And and someone asked me, well, what did you find happened? I thought the kids that kicked butt in the classroom, the ones kicking butt in the distance learning. The ones who were slackers in the classroom, they're the ones who were slackers in the distance learning. But I think they have to go to school because you're not going to get little Billy, and I apologize if any real Billies are out there.
Steinkirchner.
That's right. He said that, Mel. I didn't. It's hard to get little Billy, or Big Billy, who owns a brewery. It's hard to get Billy to pay attention in the classroom where there is accountability of a teacher, and in some cases in public schools, an aide in the classroom. If you can't get little Billy to pay attention in that setting, how in the heck are mom and dad going to get up and go to work in the morning, leave little Billy at home with a laptop, and say, okay, make sure you check in with your class at 9 o'clock and do everything you're supposed to do? It's not going to happen. And I haven't made a list yet, but the health issue is so far down the list for me. To me, it is the emotional, spiritual well-being of these students.
You want to hear a weird stat? Bringing that up. So I looked on Worldometer. So in the world right now, deaths that are caused in a broad sense by COVID-19, I think is in the 600,000s now. 609,000. Guess how many suicides? 590,000 suicides.
Yeah, it's going
so
up.
It's only beating suicides by a little bit. And the suicides are going up. It's in the stats. You can see suicides have gone up because of this lockdown.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh things. It's what they said way back. The cure can't be worse than, the cure can't be worse than the disease.
Right.
And you have people dying out there, from other things than this,
right.
And especially kids. And we're going to go on this in our next episode. But the chance of a child dying of this is so low. So again, they always bring it back to the teachers. Well, we want to protect the teachers. But if teachers are willing to go back,
they need to go back. They need to go back for the students.
Yeah, and for them to say, well, I don't want to put myself in harm's way, they have no problem with, like I said, the grocery workers, the police,
right.
The nurses, the doctors. They have no problem with them going back to work. So that's a little hypocritical.
And I saw my teacher friends. I saw you at the breweries and the wineries. It didn't bother you then, so don't act like it bothers you now.
And lastly on this, LA Unified School District, their union put out some demands. This is before they decided not to go back to school. They said, here's the list of what we want before we go back to school.
This is the epitome of being a damn shame.
And I'm going to read the list to you right now. So here's the demands from the unions from the federal government. They want a federal bailout. So what that has to do about, for the stuff they did that had to do with the virus is like they wanted to make sure there was enough social distancing, masks, things like that. Okay, right. I understand that. But then on top of that, they wanted a federal bailout. Number 2, they wanted fully funded Title I.
Oh, jeez.
So we're using a pandemic to try to get
more money. And here's the thing: what a public school really is, what I call it. You can say what you want. It is government school. It is funded by the government, and we're bringing the government more and more and more into this situation because everything the government touches always succeeds. What's going on with the post office? Does that even exist anymore? We got to keep the government out of this. And anyway, go ahead.
We'll get this. So number 4. So you can scroll through these. Number 4. So because of the pandemic, the LA Unified School District wants Medicare for all before they open their doors. So obviously this is the reason why they're not going back to school. Then from the state, they want a wealth tax on the top 1%. I don't know what this has to do with COVID-19 in schools.
So the people that live in a certain zip code, if they're wealthier, they donate more money to the school, or they donate more money to...
A new tax on unrealized capital gains due to California billionaires. So they're using, again, this is all politics. It has nothing to do with the kids and nothing to try to get the kids back into school.
It's a damn shame.
And they want a millionaire tax. Again, this is something you would see on a political debate. Instead, we're keeping our kids out of school because these things weren't met. And then on a local level, yes, they want to defund the police. Again, what does this have to do with the pandemic and children going back to school? This is all from the Union of the California, or from the LA Unified School District. Defund the police. Yep, kids, you can't come to school until we defund the police.
So you don't want your kids walking to school without police protection around?
Yeah, I know. That's one of the things. They want to get rid of. They want to get rid of the school police too. You know, again, and here's the one this is when you know. I mean, if those weren't enough just to say, okay, this is all politic bullshit. Here's one, and of course this is coming from the union, right? They want a charter moratorium, which means all privately and publicly funded charter schools. They want those gone, which they've been trying to fight against forever.
That's you talk about that is indoctrination at its finest.
I know. I mean, but
if you deal with the private schools and the charter schools like that, then they can just push their, I'm gonna say, liberal government agendas as far as they want to without anybody standing in their way.
I know, and it's just sad they use this pandemic for this, and I mean, come on, just look at it. We don't even have to say anything about it if you have a rational mind. And then they want. Remember, this is LA Unified School District. Here's another demand they wanted before they would go back to school. Financial support for undocumented students and families.
Oh, hell to the no. This is a damn shame.
So, that's your unions fighting for you.
Oh, my goodness.
Guys are fighting for our kids. They're fighting for you, kids. So anyways, we had to bring that up. That's the last story. I know this is a long episode, but... Again, there's so much going on in the world. We try to put them in these 20-minute episodes. My sister says, I won't watch it if it's over 20 minutes. So I'll do my best in editing.
Like Brian said, there's a lot we had to share today. But we thank you guys for watching. To all of our fans who are saying, well, you guys, you're talking about all this stuff that's going on in the world. When this stuff's going on in the world, for those of you who haven't checked out our earlier stuff, go back to November 2019 when we first started out, and you're thinking, these buffoons have no business talking about what's going on.
Hard-hitting things about which way your toilet paper hangs. That's the hard-hitting
That was one of my favorite episodes,
stuff, yeah.
Toilet paper hanging. But
the closest we came to controversial was our episode on cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
That was our cutting edge back then.
Right. And some of you have watched that. Some of you, and it's weird because some of you have gone back and commented on our earlier videos and said, that was a good point. I go like, what did I even say? I have to go back and watch that. But thank you for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell, and make sure you share this video with all your friends and family. And you had a good friend of yours who's
especially the kids, yeah.
Yeah. You want to tell that story real quick?
Yeah, I have a friend that I went to college with who is a Catholic priest now, and he shared this with his parents, and he's also shared it with some of the kids that his words, not mine, are drinking the Kool-Aid. But he just wanted he wanted them to get a different perspective, and I think he likes the fact that, you know, this is coming from because of what's going on with Black Lives Matter, and that's what the kids, all these white kids, seem to be so passionate about.
Right.
I think he wanted to show something where it's coming from two different perspectives.
Right.
So,
right.
So yeah. So I mean, I was happy that he shared it because he's he's a really smart guy, and I was happy that he was watching.
And for those of you who are making a decision, I know you're out there who are making a decision not to send your kids back to public school. You can use Cedric and Brian as your current events portion of your curriculum when you do homeschooling. But guys, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. We love you.
Do we get paid for that?
We'll work on that. Until next time, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian. We'll see you later.